Mortal Kombat has delivered brutal fatalities, iconic characters, and competitive fighting gameplay across 23 different games. But while some characters like Scorpion and Sub-Zero became legends, others crashed and burned so badly they became hated by everyone, consistently ranking at the absolute bottom of tier lists. And one character is so bad, they appear at the bottom tier multiple times across different games. And today, I'm breaking down the worst character in every single mainline Mortal Kombat game. Starting with the original, Mortal Kombat. When the original game launched in arcades back in 1992, Raiden became the poster child for how not to design a fighting game character. You can land a Superman charge or teleport, moves that should put you at advantage, and your opponent can just block and punish you anyway, even on hit. You're getting punished for successfully landing your attacks. That's not balance, that's a design nightmare. Raiden players had to have psychic level awareness just to not get demolished every time they tried anything. No safe pressure tools, no way to control the match, just constant gambling. Meanwhile, Liu Kang is across the screen throwing safe fireballs and bicycle kicking with zero consequences. Liu Kang players could play on autopilot. Raiden players were sweating bullets on every input, and before someone brings up, but he has zoning potential, yeah, some Reddit warriors tried that argument because he could control space in casual matches against button mashers. The competitive scene wasn't buying it. Raiden sat firmly at the bottom of every tier list that mattered. Spoiler alert, this won't be the last time we see the devs completely whiff on a character's design. Mortal Kombat 2, the 1993 sequel, brought an expanded roster, and somehow 3 characters competing for worst in the game. Reptile had incredibly slow movement speed, and force balls so reactable you could block them in your sleep. Sub-Zero had 0 offensive options, nothing to open up defenses. Johnny Cage's zoning was decent, but that's about all he had. Reddit and YouTube went to war over which one actually sucked the most. Some players swore Cage's zoning put him mid-tier. Others pointed out that one decent tool doesn't save you when your neutral game is non-existent. Reptile's secret boss status and hidden character hype meant absolutely nothing in competitive play where speed and safety mattered. Reptile and Sub-Zero were the most consistent bottom picks. But here's what matters. MK2 proved the devs still hadn't figured out how to balance slow characters or give grapplers the tools they needed. That problem is about to get way worse. Mortal Kombat 3, Stryker was the undisputed worst character in MK3, and it wasn't even close. Poor range on normal attacks, weak specials that couldn't apply pressure, and grenades so slow you could take a bathroom break before they landed. In a game built around speed and rushdown, Stryker had nothing. Cabal's speed and run cancels created devastating mix-ups. Stryker had a gun that cops probably wouldn't even issue, while other games had communities debating who sat at the bottom. MK3 had unanimous agreement. Stryker was unplayable at competitive levels. The only rare time, the entire community looked at a character and said, yeah, that's just broken, but Shiva's about to show up and make these characters look viable. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. That same year, the enhanced version launched with Shiva and Mileena battling for worst character. Shiva's massive hitbox meant she took significantly more damage from combos than other characters, and her combo potential was atrocious compared to the rest of the cast. Kitana's fan lifts allowed her to set up devastating juggle combos, while Shiva's slow, predictable moves left her with nothing comparable. She received no meaningful buffs in later updates, cementing her status at the bottom. Mileena had similar problems with losing to Human Smoke's insane rushdown capabilities, but with slightly better tools overall. Forums on Test Your Might debated whether Kitana's placement was worse, but the evidence showed Kitana at least had setups and tools. Glitch jabs in this game shifted some meta placements, but Shiva didn't benefit from any of these exploits, leaving her even further behind characters who could take advantage of system mechanics. Mortal Kombat Trilogy, the 1996 compilation, brought together characters from previous games, creating a massive roster, but Shiva's issues remained completely unchanged from Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Her large hitbox continued to be a defensive nightmare, and her lack of strong combo tools meant she was still bottom tier. While no official tier list existed for Trilogy due to its status as a collection game, retrospective community analyses aligned with the UMK3 assessments, keeping Shiva firmly planted at the worst position. The game featured top-tier ninja variants with blistering speed that could run circles around Shiva. The sheer size of the roster meant individual character weaknesses were diluted across many fighters, with over 30 characters to choose from, but Shiva's problems were too fundamental to overcome. Her slow movement and terrible hitbox meant she was combo food for anyone who knew what they were doing. Notice something interesting? We're seeing a pattern with character archetypes that the devs kept getting wrong. Keep that in mind. Mortal Kombat 4 and Mortal Kombat Gold. When the series made the jump to 3D in 1997 and 1999, Kai and Shinnok emerged as the bottom-tier characters. Kai's upward-aimed fireball was laughably easy to avoid, requiring no unique defensive strategy whatsoever. He had no unique edges over other characters, nothing that made him worth picking in competitive play. Shinnok fared slightly better with move-stealing potential in his shape-shifting abilities, giving him at least some utility, though this was boring compared to Fujin's wind control abilities that allowed for actual spacing and control. Gold added more characters to the roster, but the core issues remained, and the additions didn't salvage the bottom tiers. The community consensus on Reddit and YouTube clearly identified Kai as the overall worst, with discussions repeatedly calling him out as having zero competitive viability in a game that was already struggling with balance issues as it transitioned to 3D gameplay. Mortal Kombat: Deadly Alliance. The 2002 entry brought stance systems and unlockable characters, but Cyrax ended up as the undisputed worst. His damage output was the lowest in the entire game, he had no meaningful mix-up options to open up defensive opponents, and he lacked any stance utility that could have compensated for these weaknesses. Being an unlockable character added frustration to his weakness, as players who went through the effort to unlock him discovered he was competitively worthless. Top-tier characters like Bo Rai Cho dominated with high damage combos and better stance transitions, as shown in Ketchup and Mustard's competitive breakdowns on YouTube. The analysis was undisputed across event hubs and YouTube, with characters who had strong combo potential and stance utility completely overshadowing Cyrax's pathetic toolkit. He couldn't threaten opponents, couldn't close out games, and had nothing to make up for his abysmal damage. Mortal Kombat: Deception. Released in 2004, this game featured Sindel, Ermac, and Kenshi competing for the bottom spot. Though Sindel's throw glitch made her particularly notorious, her throw could be punished by opponents with full combos, essentially turning what should have been a safe offensive tool into a death sentence in unblockable, throw-heavy metas. This was a crippling flaw compared to Dairu's ground pound, which provided safe damage without the risk of getting destroyed. Ermac and Kenshi both suffered from poor placement in the mid to low tiers, lacking mix potential compared to Noob Smoke's infinite combo setups and telekinetic safety. Reddit discussions revealed disagreements on Sindel's exact placement, with some players arguing the glitch moved her to mid-tier in casual play because opponents had to actively exploit it. However, competitive tournament players emphasized that the glitch was well known and easily punished at high levels of play, making her the consensus worst pick in serious competitive matches where everyone knew how to exploit her weakness. Mortal Kombat: Armageddon. The 2006 installment featured the largest roster in the series at the time, with over 60 characters, which meant individual weaknesses were harder to identify clearly. Kai returned and still had no standout moves, stances, or advantages in the massive roster. Compared to characters with retained infinites from prior games, like Frost, who maintained strong tools, Kai's complete blandness stood out even more. The lack of unique tools, sauce, or competitive edges left him in a similar position as Mortal Kombat 4. Due to significant lag and online connectivity issues at launch, no official tier lists were created. But community consensus on sites like GameFAQs and YouTube agreed that Kai's lack of anything interesting made him bottom tier, even in a game where the sheer number of characters made definitive rankings nearly impossible. Online lag diluted the tier placements overall, but Kai's problems were evident regardless. Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. This controversial 2008 crossover featured Lex Luthor and Catwoman as the worst characters, standing out as particularly underwhelming in an already broken and unbalanced game. Lex Luthor's moveset was boring and uninspired, lacking any creative or powerful options despite his comic book legacy. Catwoman suffered from similar issues, with no real tools to compete against characters with infinites and better combo loops. Compare them to Deathstroke, who at least had combo loop potential that made him somewhat viable. The game itself was poorly received competitively due to balance problems across the board, but these two characters managed to be even worse than the already low standard, making them easy targets for community criticism on YouTube and forums. Remember when I said one character appears multiple times? Shiva's coming back, and somehow she gets worse. Mortal Kombat 2011. Also known as MK9, this reboot brought the series back to its 2D roots, but Shiva and Jade emerged as the worst characters. Shiva's problems were painfully familiar by this point. Her large size and slow speed made her incredibly easy to combo and zone out, with poor gimmick potential that could be shut down by any competent player. Unlike Cabal's overwhelming dominance in the meta, with his speed and pressure forcing opponents into constant defense, Shiva had nothing. Jade was slow, meter-hungry, and lost the majority of her matchups against the rest of the cast. She couldn't compete with characters who had actual mix-up potential. Bugs like the meter burn glitches hurt Jade more than others because she needed meter to function at all. Opinions varied within the community, with some players definitively placing Shiva as the absolute worst on YouTube, while others on Reddit argued both characters were equally terrible in competitive play. Both lacked the tools to function at tournament level against the game's top tiers. Mortal Kombat X. The 2015 entry introduced character variations, adding significant complexity to tier rankings. Farah Tor in the Lackey variation scored the lowest on Event Hub's rankings due to poor matchup spreads, low damage output compared to other characters, and severe variation limitations that left the character with no real strengths. Their 3-7 matchup spread against top tiers like Tremor and Sector highlighted their zoning weaknesses, with Farah Chator lacking the tools to deal with characters who could control space. Sub-Zero's Unbreakable variation missed crucial tools compared to Grandmaster's clone setups, and Scorpion's Inferno variation also struggled significantly. While the base game was well balanced overall, these specific variations represented the bottom of the barrel, with players on Reddit and event hubs agreeing that Farah Tor Lackey was the overall worst option in competitive play. The character required significantly more effort to win matches compared to versatile tops, who had multiple strong variations, making tournament success nearly impossible. Mortal Kombat 11. The 2019 release featured Rambo, Shao Kahn, and RoboCop at the bottom of tier lists and community breakdowns. They suffered from poor mobility, lack of safe strings to pressure opponents, and weak competitive tools even after receiving buffs. Rambo's weak anti-air capabilities failed against Cetrian's oppressive zoning, leaving him helpless in key matchups. Earlier versions of the meta were even worse for these characters, with Shao Kahn ranking as the absolute worst before DLC characters like Rambo and RoboCop were released and somehow managed to sink even lower. Patches and updates failed to elevate them significantly compared to characters who maintained strong positions throughout the game's lifespan. DLC characters like Rambo and RoboCop were particularly disappointing, given the hype surrounding their inclusion, with players on Reddit and event hubs expressing frustration that these iconic characters couldn't compete at all. Shao Kahn was consistently ranked worst overall across multiple sources, though some community discussions noted that earlier metas had different bottom-tier characters before buffs and nerfs reshuffled the rankings. This is where it gets complicated. 4 characters are fighting for worst, patches drop monthly, and the community can't even agree anymore. Here's why. Mortal Kombat 1, the most recent game in the franchise and the one with the most complex tier discussions due to ongoing patches. Following the Chaos Reigns expansion and the EVO 2025 patches released in September 2025, Tanya, Li Mei, Shang Tsung, and Rain have consistently appeared at the bottom tier across multiple sources. Tanya lacks mix-up potential and became highly punishable after receiving nerfs to her launcher and mid-range tools, unlike Johnny Cage, who excels with cameo synergy that allows him to control matches. Li Mei's high damage is inaccessible without the proper tools to close gaps, contrasting sharply with Scorpion's excellent pace control that lets him dictate the flow of fights. Shang Tsung's stance switching system fails to work cohesively according to September 2025 tier lists, leaving him without the versatility that top-tier characters enjoy. Rain's crushing pressure is weak compared to Cyrax's dominant top-tier status despite Rain receiving nerfs, showing how patches can completely flip character viability. Community debates note that some characters like Havoc experienced a post-nerf drop after receiving changes that reduced his mix potential and added death-on-block vulnerabilities, but X discussions and tournament usage data show he remains mid-low rather than true bottom tier. Event Hub's rankings and ongoing tournament results emphasize that the tier list remains fluid, with balance patches constantly changing character viability. Characters who were considered bottom tier in earlier 2023-2024 metas have risen or fallen based on patch changes, while others have maintained their positions. As of late 2025, consensus points to Tanya as arguably the worst overall, though ongoing debates continue about whether Li Mei, Shang Tsung, or Rain could claim that spot, depending on the specific matchup or playstyle. The meta continues to evolve with each tournament and patch. If you enjoyed this video and want to see every single MK guest character fatality explained, click now.